I have to ask the question, how does she give the thumbs up when we're live? She goes hiding. All right. I
That's a
think
good
we are.
question.
Hi, everybody. It is Tech Chat Tuesday for Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. I'm Ken Rimple,
I'm Sujan Kapadia.
and we're here to talk about different tech things we're interested in this week. Up front, want to make sure that people are aware of our YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/Chariot Solutions, you'll see all of our playlists. We are a Tech Chat Tuesdays playlist there. So if you want to, watch our shows later, go back and reminisce about one you really like, I guess, they are available to you there. Also, we have as National Women's Week, and yesterday was the uh, National Women's Day. There is a playlist here, which is Spotlight Our Amazing Women Speakers. This is from all of our different events. And so, we have talks going back from every E to E we've done, different other events. It's really, really good. So you can see all the people that we've worked with over the years.
If someone has watched I would say either all the ET videos, which is a gargantuan task, but if someone has even watched all of these tech casts that we're doing, let us know. It'd be kind of cool to get a list of those names and we can give everyone a shout out who's on that list.
Oh, that's a good idea. It's a really good idea. Cool. And you can do that through our @TechCast Twitter user, or you can email us at techcastfeedback@chariotsolutions.com. Great idea, Sujan. I'm using a new feature of Chrome that just dropped in, I guess, Chrome, whatever, the current version. It's the tab groups. And so you can actually, on any tabs, I'll go browsing here for a second. Like I'll just go to, BBC News or something like that. Who cares what it is? And then you can right click on it and do add tab to group, new group, news. And all of a sudden you have a collapsible group of tabs. So did you say you were using that for a mobile app, right?
Yeah, I use it on Android Chrome, and it's super useful because you're on the phone, you're kind of randomly walking through the web, and you're like hit this and then this, and so it's like just keeps a thread of related things together.
Yep.
So it makes surfing, for me at least, and researching like a lot more organized.
Yeah, and the fact that it's like built into Chrome now, you don't have to go searching for an extension, which is really nice. So, all right. So yeah, youtube.com/Chariot Solutions. That's one. Also want to bring up our events here. So we've got 2 events coming up. First, let me go to the one that's coming up next week on the 17th, 18th, 18th. Should know that off the top of my head because I'm going to be doing this event. Oh, wrong one. Let me go back. 30 years of Linux and open source. Thank you. That is on the 18th. And so we have 2 talks starting at 3:15 p.m. on the 18th. It's a free event. The first talk is going to be Aaron Mulder and myself talking about Chariot's work over the years using open source, and from using it, finding it, supporting applications written in it, to even participating in different open source type of forums and such. And so that starts it. And then after that, we're going to have Nithya Ruff, who's the executive director of open source at Comcast, and she's also the chair of the Linux Foundation's board of directors. So she works with open source contributors all the time. And so we'll get a feel for her of like where it has been in terms of stewardship and where it's heading, and some things that happen at that level that might be interesting to people. So that's coming up on March 18th. Again, it's a free event, 3:15 p.m. Nice, kind of close to end of your day. You can kind of end your day with us. We'll also have a happy hour afterwards online to talk about. It's all on Zoom. And so we'll be able to chat with each other at the end. So we hope you join us. Tracy has an executive town hall session, leadership strategies to drive innovation, with Gita Schmidt, who is the CEO of Humio. And so she'll be talking about, different topics here. So maintaining a culture and unity with a diverse workforce, changes in the marketplace and how they're impacting business leaders. So kind of a business level talk for people in tech. And that might be interesting for you. So if it is, that's coming up on March 10th, which is tomorrow. So, hey, sign up 11 a.m. And so that's I think a 1-hour event. Also want to mention that our emerging technologies for the enterprise conference, we're definitely cooking here. Nope, wrong year. Hey, you want to go to last year's event? PhillyEmergingTech.com. I typed in 2020 by accident, but it's May 4th to 6th. I got panicked when I saw April. I'm like, no, it's not.
2020 is behind us now.
Right. Let's move on to 2021. So May 4th to 6th of 2021 this year. And again, we're still adding a few speakers, but great lineup. It's $89, I believe, of the tickets, and great speakers. So we have Alan Kay, the person who helped invent personal computing by writing the first graphical user interface. Steve Jobs saw that and at Xerox PARC, and ended up creating the Apple Macintosh from that event, or the Lisa, I think, first. So he really kind of sparked that whole thing. He also helped build the first object-oriented programming language. So Alan Kay is an amazing speaker. We can't wait to have him, and he's one of our featured keynotes.
If you're on the fence about registering, just check out some of the past talks from previous years that Ken referenced earlier on our YouTube channel, and I think you'll be pretty happy with the quality.
Yeah. We get into things like we have Kent Beck coming, author of Extreme Programming. We've got Jessica Kerr coming back again, a great speaker. Angie Jones, who's a developer advocate for Apple Tools. We've got Daniel Spiewak again, talking about what is he talking about? I'm curious here.
Usually it tends to be Scala functional programming.
Yeah, he's always a good speaker. Brian Getz, the Oracle language architect. David Nolan from ClojureScript. Just some great people. Nithya is also speaking. And we keep adding people to this the next couple of weeks, so check back. But you might want to register soon because we got a really good set of speakers here. Grab your spot. Okay, cool. So and that's it. So let's get into our news items then. Let me close out the Chariot one. Okay, so what's this one? We've got a Wi-Fi signals machine learning to predict where you are.
Yeah, so pretty cool. So it involves basically using your Wi-Fi router and the signal coming from your Wi-Fi router, and there's a couple third-party dependencies it uses to be able to get that and process that data. But it's using that and training it with known locations in your house. So like, let's say in your living room, then you can kind of run the software saying, I'm in my living room right now, and then go to your bedroom, go to your kitchen, train it that way. And then it basically trains a machine learning model. I didn't look into the details of what kind of machine learning model it is, what exactly it's doing. But once you've done that, you can just kind of use that in your house and say, hey, where am I? And it will tell you or try to infer based off of the signal and whatever qualities of that it's using to determine where in the house you are. So I just thought it's pretty neat that you could use something like a Wi-Fi signal and machine learning to try to get that kind of information.
Wow, that's really cool. And Python based. So you get fun with that. And that's at GitHub. CootandPy, where am I?
So I guess in a larger context, or if you're in an office building with access points all over the place, it'd be interesting to try this out to see how accurate it is within an office complex.
Yeah, very cool. All right. If you are on any Apple device, update. So 14.4.1 of iOS and iPadOS has been it's there to patch a memory corruption issue, and so there's a 0-day, I guess, threat where people can take control of your computer to elevate privileges and achieve remote code execution. And this is on The Hacker News, which is, I guess, a news website. It's not Hacker News, but The Hacker News. And there's actually, it looks like right after the 3 0-day vulnerabilities we just had, this one is yet another one. So you're going to see an update. Go ahead and apply it. Also, there's an update for OS 10 for your Safari browser as well. So, just keep in mind that's something you might want to pay attention to because people are hacking these things and finding these vulnerabilities all the time. So just keep your browsers patched. One other thing I wanted to bring up that I thought was kind of cool was the Microsoft conference last week. They announced something called Microsoft Mesh. This is like, holodeck mixed reality kind of stuff. So I guess if you're holding a HoloLens and wearing it, or you're using a phone that can support this kind of thing in the future, and I guess relatively soon, you'll be able to see kind of like imagine things that are showing up, or you can kind of talk to a doctor in virtual space, or you can take a look at plans for things. So it's a mixed reality system. It looks like that they're supporting.
I get chills when I see that tagline at the top here. It can be anywhere. It's very, I don't know, it seems very Black Mirror-ish.
Sorry, Microsoft. Yeah, it seems really wild. So for example, this is like very Black Mirror-ish kind of thing here.
Yeah.
Engage with eye contact, facial expression, and gestures. You can go
It,
different places. So have you played any VR games? Have you actually played any
I've played a few, and I mean, I'm floored by how good they are and how much better they keep getting every year. And I think the educational aspects of it are like amazing, with being able to visit other cities and museums virtually. It's really cool.
This Train Together Anywhere is blowing my mind. It's like, so the person has like a virtual avatar and is talking, and then the other person has their lens on and they're looking. And so I guess when you have these devices, you can really start, using them in a way that you can interact with things like this, which is really cool. So something to look at is more and more of this technology is coming out, but mesh is the one that they're talking about right now. And I guess
it's funny today, nothing to do with VR, but just kind of how far we've come with technology. I was driving to work. I don't come to the office that often, but I do come for doing the tech chat. And there was a surveyor or someone in construction, with an iPad, and there was a drone flying above someone's home, and they were probably doing an aerial survey of it. And that's just normal now. But as I was driving by, I'm like, I never would have imagined this as a kid. There's a guy with a tablet controlling a drone looking at a house. It's just very surreal when you put all those pieces together and think about it.
It's wild. The stuff people do today with tech is just crazy. All these wireless devices everywhere, and very cool. So yeah, apparently HoloLens, and they said mobile phones, tablets, or PCs using any mesh-enabled app. So it's an API platform.
Is there a beta program to join or like get hardware for cheap or free?
We should find out. You can get news from them, but I'm sure if you're, here we go. Join the mixed reality developer program. So yes, there apparently is. We should get on that and take a look at it. All right. Here's another cool futuristic thing that's actually happening today. Remember we talked about the Mars landing. That mission control software is written in Vue.js, and I probably know backend. I'm not sure exactly. And it's open source. It's called NASA's OpenMCT, which is their mission control technologies. So if you want to see how they built that, it looks like they're not using TypeScript. They're using JavaScript. So like if you grab any one of these things, you'll see, like, of course, I'm going to always fail when I do this, but things are in plain old JavaScript. They're not in TypeScript.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, using Vue. So interesting to kind of pull that apart and take a look at it.
I'm actually really, I'll have to take a look at that. I'm really interested in seeing, I know NASA is really known for, really good testing practices. I'm curious to see what their unit tests and things look like.
Yeah, they definitely have specs in here. That's a small spec. I did get a little sad when I saw in the MCT spec, was it one of them? It started with an X describe, which was disabled. I'm like, oh no! But this one here, like for example, is some specs running things, kicking off features, and they seem to be using specs all the way through the app, so it should be interesting to see.
Nice.
Yep. All right. Do it, Sujan.
Yes. So I don't know if it's Dolt or Do It. Is it an L or an I? I thought it was an L. Dolt Hub.
It might be Dolt. I like Do It better, but yeah, it's Dolt.
So pretty cool. This is Git for data, and it heavily relies on another third-party dependency. I think it's called Nom. But basically, it's a MySQL database that you can treat as Git. So you can like clone it, you can fork it, you can do DDL and DML statements, and you can commit them. So it captures changes to your database as change sets that you can commit, that you can share with others, and they can fork from it. They can merge back into it. When you've made changes, you can actually look at the changes between commits, and it shows what data has changed from commit to commit. So it's basically saying, here, take it, you get the structured relational database instead of just sharing like CSV files or things like that in source control. Getting like a database to hack around with that can be shared and version controlled itself, which I think could be pretty cool for people that like really need to just quickly bootstrap something, or scientists or data engineers that need to start with a known data set and not have to like cobble together files. Like they can start with an RDBMS right off the bat. It's pretty neat.
Especially being able to diff different versions of it to see like what's changed between the one I have versus the commit.
Yeah, like I could see
this for seed data for your application.
Exactly. I could see this being pretty useful for like workshops or training or anything. It'd be pretty cool.
How do you think this compares to something like some of the migrations tools we've used? Is it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I wouldn't. I'm not sure I would compare like something like Flyway
Right.
Or Liquibase to this. To me, this is more about sharing data and less about capturing migrations or applying migrations. But it allows someone to share a database that has history attached to it, so you can know how things happened, and then kind of do your own thing. Maybe make a pull request back or things like that. So I didn't see any reference to pull request here, but there was forking and merging and branching, so you could essentially do the same model.
That's really wild. Definitely something to check out.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, and I guess I should mention what they've been using it for is they've been using it to clone data sets around COVID, image data for machine learning, word data for text classification, machine learning, et cetera, things like that. So I think the idea is like, hey, take a lot of these open data sets and put them in a database and then have at it.
Very cool. And that's at github.com/dolthub/dolt. Very nice. Okay, let's see here. I figured I threw this one in here. Excel never dies. We know this. We know this in tech because once I started working in an office that had Excel, you'd always get the business person would come up and say, well, it works in Excel. Turn this giant Excel spreadsheet with tons of macros into a front end, into a back end and a front end. And like you're teasing apart macros and formulas and links and crazy stuff. But apparently it doesn't die because it is still cooking strong out there. I think this is the actual, here it is. Excel never dies.
Yes, they need like Newton laws of motion for Excel. Like data in Excel will stay in Excel.
That's right. An action Excel will have an equal and opposite reaction to close the laptop and you say, can I take this out of Excel? No. Oh, man. So, yeah, I mean, some of the things that have been happening is, I mean, Excel there's so much code living in Excel for so many business type people. And I think it's because business people, especially numbers people, think in terms of spreadsheets of data, think in terms of rows and columns of data. And so they wire together things that they have formulas pre-written for them that take, net present values. And that's a really simple example, but like calculating forecasted values of things and such. If they're already written for them, they can take advantage of these recipes and just use these functions. But one of the things that's happened recently, and I think we mentioned this on the show a while back, is that they've launched Lambda for Excel, which means you can write, eventually, I get to this, there we go. You can write your own functions and apply them. So now, technically speaking, Excel is Turing complete, which means you can do all the things that Turing complete language can do. And that's interesting and terrifying all at once to me.
Yeah, and not only that, there's another thing that was either announced or updated at Ignite last week called Microsoft Power Apps, which is their low-code way of building apps. Low-code meaning you're not really writing application code, right, like Java or C++ or C#, things like that, Python. You're writing scriptlets or you're writing rules to declaratively connect like form fields, et cetera, to data sources.
Feels like AppleScript almost, or like the Automator.
Right. Like Google had something similar. I forget what it's called. But anyway, so a lot of the functions that are available in Excel are available in Power Apps, and they're trying to reach parity there as new things are introduced in Excel, gets introduced in Power Apps. So people that are used to, kind of interacting with spreadsheets for most of their workday would be a natural transition for them to start building apps with Power Apps. It'd be interesting to see where that goes and how useful it is. But the idea that you're taking people that are Excel developers or Excel spreadsheet users and giving them the power to build small applications is definitely intriguing.
It's kind of like, in a way, data scientists getting that kind of power. And you'll still need programmers to really optimize a path or something that's like high volume, but they can give you a good start at what they want. They can envision something by using these tools too, which is great. Or maybe they work just fine enough for them. So very interesting. Yeah. Non-extensive graph of some of the companies built to pick off pieces of Excel for specific verticals. So apparently, $500 billion worth of market cap in that chart. Yike. Okay. All right. Let's see. We have some other things in here. Here's a good one. Alan McDonald. Now, I remember the Challenger launch. Were you old enough to remember the Challenger
Yeah,
launch?
so we saw it in school and saw it happen, and then the teacher immediately turned off the TV when that occurred. Which
something else.
I'll never forget that day.
Yeah, it was something else. But there was one person that basically said, no, don't launch the Challenger.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Alan McDonald.
So the person, Alan McDonald, he was working at the time for what's the name of the company?
Yeah,
Morton Thiokol, and he essentially had been saying up to the day of the launch, like, please don't launch, please don't launch, please don't launch. I do not approve of this. There's a number of corners being cut. The temperatures are too low for the O-rings, et cetera. So, for those that don't know, Space Shuttle Challenger, what year? 1986.
Yeah.
Basically, what happened was the O-rings were never tested in extreme cold, and on the morning of the launch, the cold rubber became stiff, failing to fully seal the joint, which led to an explosion, a leakage and an explosion. So Alan McDonald had predicted something like that and essentially said these things are outside of their tolerance levels for temperature, and I'm not going to approve it. And he got pressure from management to approve it. He got pressure from NASA. NASA put pressure on Morton Thiokol to approve it, and so they did. But he held his guns and said, no, I'm not going to do it. So I think this is one: listen to your engineers. Don't cut corners. Systems are complex. There's a lot of different interrelated pieces. So it's not just a sum of all the. It is a sum of all the parts, but that's very complicated. So I think this is a case where it's like a kind of a perfect storm of different things happening and different managerial and processes that broke down to allow this to happen. So I would recommend anyone please read this and then research your own on the Challenger space shuttle and the history around that and the investigation done afterwards that Richard Feynman was part of too.
Yes.
They had pressured him to also kind of, he told them up front, like, you guys are going to have to do what I tell you to do or my recommendations and let me say whatever I want to say. Otherwise, I'm not going to be part of this investigation.
He was an indomitable person. You could not tell Richard Feynman what to do.
Yeah.
He would find the facts. And I remember him doing a demo. I don't know if they dipped it in liquid nitrogen or probably not, but like cold. And they showed that you could just disintegrate an O-rings material. I think it was a press event or maybe it was like a congressional hearing, but he was not going to be cowed. And this poor guy really was tortured through this thing, and he was right.
Yeah.
So, and Scott Detrow did this, I guess, on NPR. So he had a really good interview, and there's an archive recording of an interview with McDonald. So definitely something to check out. This is a great one. Thank you.
And then he eventually got promoted. I think the other interesting thing is Congress and others, once they found out about this, that he was pressured after he did the right thing, they basically, slapped the wrist NASA and Morton Thiokol and supported Alan. And then he eventually got promoted up and to redesign the O-rings and things like that. So I guess the story ended well. I'm surprised he stuck around at Morton Thiokol after all that. But I guess he felt like there was a higher duty to solve this problem and correct it so it doesn't happen again. So, hats off to him.
What a good person. Definitely a good person. One of the greats. All right. What do we have here? How to automatically connect Jira tickets to Google Sheets.
So what I found interesting about this is not really the fact that you're connecting Jira to Google Sheets, although so the tool underneath here called reshuffle is basically like IFFT for developers. It's JavaScript node based, and you're essentially able to connect different APIs together, like Google Sheets and Jira, Twilio and Slack, or so in code you're basically there's a bunch of connectors, and I have a link to the GitHub project that has all the repos for all the different connectors that are currently available, and you can write your own and extend it. So essentially it's you configure how you want to retrieve data from something and push it to something else. So it does all the heavy lifting for you with the existing connectors, and you're just providing the authentication credentials and the criteria for what data you want, what you're interested in, and how you want to get it. Now it does basic polling, so you can control like the polling period. That's how it retrieves data and checks for changes. So I haven't played around with this to see security issues or performance issues, things like that. But I think if you need to quickly connect a couple different services, this is a quick way to hack something together for local developer tools for your team.
That's a great Swiss Army knife to have.
Yeah, cool. And I guess the nice thing about this one specifically is a lot of times someone doesn't want to go into Jira or doesn't have access to Jira, right? They just want to see what are all the tickets in this release or all the tickets in the current status. In an executive is not going to log into Jira, but they may want to have an Excel spreadsheet that gives them like a roll up of all the different statuses. So it'd be kind of cool to use this to generate that.
Very cool. All right. So the tool is called Reshuffle. And
Yeah.
this is an article from DZone by Alan Lee. Awesome. By the way, we'll have a link to all these articles in the show notes on the YouTube channel, and as well as our post on Chariot Solutions. So if you need to get to these links, you can certainly do so, and we encourage that. So, and if you use this tool, let us know at techcastfeedback@chariotsolutions.com or at our @techcast Twitter feed. All right. And now, this is another interesting thing on DZone. So Brendan Loveless wrote an article, adding IoT to my home office desk.
Yeah, this is insane. So my poor daughter, I was reading this as she was waking up, researching links for the show. And then I went through this whole article with her. I was so amazed. I'm like, I'm going to talk to you about it.
Oh, cool.
As she was half awake. Anyway, this person started, I've never seen a desk like this. So I guess they've had standing desks that move up and down for quite some time. There's apparently ones with hand cranks, which I did not know about. Yeah. So he had an older desk with a hand crank, and what he basically wanted to do is get rid of the hand crank and automate it. So he went through the process of he had a dual shaft motor, and he basically put it in the rod that the crank would turn, and used a rubber belt. First experiment, figured out, okay, that's not going to work. The motor wasn't powerful enough, and it just chewed through the rubber belt and didn't actually move anything.
Just ripped it apart. Yeah.
So then he's like, okay, clearly it's not powerful enough. So he had to research what torque is and lever arms and figure out what kind of motor would I need. So what he did was he took a milk bottle, a milk jug, filled it with water or whatever, tied it to the hand crank, filled it up enough until it started turning the hand crank. Then he takes the full bottle and turns the hand crank back to the top position, and ties a jug and sees, like, is there enough weight for it to move? And found out that, okay, 4 pounds was enough to move it. And he used an online calculator to take the length of the lever arm and the poundage to figure out what torque motor he'd need. Then he ordered a motor that has the right torque. Then ordered 2 of them, cut up the rod to put these 2 motors in. And this is going to take a minute to explain, but it's really, really freaking cool. And this guy had never done any of these things before, so everything was a new, bold experiment for him. So he cuts the rod, puts the 2 motors on, gets it working, but it's so extremely slow. He says, like, from standing to all the way down, or all the way down to standing all the way up. He goes, I could go to the bathroom and like get a coffee and come back, and it would still be doing it. That's how slow it was.
And that won't do. So
he's like, the next thing I learned is, okay, torque is only one part of it. There's a thing called RPM. So he's like, I need a motor that has a higher RPM. So then he found a motor that has a higher RPM, ordered it, and it took like a month to come from China. But it wasn't a dual shaft motor, so he needed a 90-degree 1-to-1 gearbox so he could, rotate the, change the force 90 degrees. So he got the gearbox on this new motor, gets it working, it's running at a good speed. So now that the ability to move the desk up and down has been solved, which is really cool, just reading up to that point. Afterward, like, I want to control this for Bluetooth. So he initially started with a Nordic Thingy 52 and then switched to an ESP32, which folks at Chariot, like Don Coleman, have a lot of experience on both of those system on a chips. So he took that and he built a Bluetooth service with the characteristics using his phone and coded the firmware Arduino-based to be able to control the desk through his phone. So basically, at the end of all of this, he's got he learned physics. He learned how to cut things and put motors on them and get that all working. Then he figured out how to add IoT to it, and he learned Bluetooth and MQTT and built an app to do all this to control the desk. And the other really cool thing is he wanted to be able to say, like, I want the desk to be at this height or that height. Well, the way to do that is he used it's called a time of flight LiDAR sensor. It's like $40 on SparkFun or something. Basically, it's not true LiDAR. It's not using a laser, but it uses infrared light. And from 10 centimeters to probably like 12 meters is the range. It bounces light off, and then it determines how long it takes for that light to come back. And by that, it determines the distance. So he uses a time of flight sensor to figure out height of the desk so he can actually set the height and control it through the app. It's just amazing that the person did all of this and stuck through it and got it working. And I mean, yeah.
Then I see right here. Then my wife said something would change everything. What if you could control it with your voice?
There's UX for you. Yeah.
Can we hire him?
Yeah, I swear, this is like the culmination of, I think, a lot of different things.
Hey, while we're at it, if you're that guy and you want to work for Chariot,
Can we interview you? Like, we'd love to chat with you.
right? What is our? Should know this. What doesn't matter. If you go to ChariotSolutions.com and go to, where is it? Now I can't find it. About join our day. I think about our about page. You can find it right there. But we are hiring. So we're looking for good tech talent. That is not an honest segue. I just figured that out. I'm like, oh, I could do the segue to that now. But yeah, so we are hiring. And so if you go to ChariotSolutions.com, you click our about page, there's a careers page. That's what I was looking for. And you can look at our open positions. And if you're that guy and you write code and you're that smart, please, that kind of person, we love.
Kind of out of the box thinking, resourceful, is willing to roll up their sleeves and go across different types of tech and just make it work.
That's consulting,
awesome.
Right?
Exactly.
Consulting is that. Being a good consultant is being observant and creative and thinking about things and trying approaches. And yeah, cool. Great stuff. I have another topic for us, and this might crash and burn, but hey, why not? I figured, I don't have a lot of news this week, and I like talking about new tech things. So let me see if I can share my whole desktop here and move things out of the way. I want to talk about publishing formats a little bit. I do a lot of teaching and presentations, and one of the things I keep getting called on to do is, put together training materials. So let me just share my screen here. Do I have anything in here I don't want shown?
Time for the coffee.
Yeah, right. I'm going to sneeze too. Excuse me.
Bless you.
That's how it's going to crash and burn. I'm having an allergy attack. Okay, so what I want to do here is I'm going to show my screen. Let me just unshare real quick. Share the whole screen. Hopefully this isn't too small. There we go. And I want to talk a little bit about publication formats. So when you're writing material for training or for, presenting to people, some people use Keynote or use PowerPoint or whatever and put together presentations through a tool. Programmers usually try to avoid doing that because we don't like using slow, heavyweight tools to do our development of content. So we look for things like a markup language, like Markdown or something like that. We look for things like slide deck tools that will run content like Markdown through and generate slides so we don't have to edit HTML, which is the worst format to write anything in. It's like the worst markup language. So what I like to do is I like to try to put things in a markup tool. And I started off my journey when I first did a book. I did a book called Spring Root in Action years ago for Manning, and we were using something called DocBook. Newsflash, XML is not the best writing language either. So I had to find a writing tool that could actually edit DocBook, and I could look at the WYSIWYG version of it so I wouldn't go crazy. Flash forward to when I was doing my own training, I used Markdown a lot. And Markdown's great. A lot of people use Markdown. GitHub naturally renders Markdown when you look at the project page. So there's a way of visualizing it for people. And Markdown's a pretty easy language to learn, etc. But it's limited in terms of things like code samples. Like if you want to highlight entries in code samples, or you want to have tips or call outs or nice looking tables, I think Markdown is kind of limited. So a while ago, I ran into ASCIIDoc, and more specifically, ASCIIDoc itself was a Ruby-based processing tool and markup language for writing nice-looking content. And so at one point, Dan Allen, who we both know from originally JBoss and the Scene project, rewrote a lot of the tooling for ASCIIDoc, created a project called ASCIIDoctor, which is a processor for ASCIIDoc language that is, what is it, Java-based? I think it's Java-based. But anyway, so the tool, you install this tool and you can transform ASCIIDoc to different formats. It's similar, although a little fussier than Markdown. Let me just show you a little bit of code here. I'm going to make this large. There's tooling for it. I'm using Visual Studio Code right now, and there's a live preview in Visual Studio Code. So you can kind of click on things and see content. And as you're modifying it, you know, you immediately see the change. So it's nice for. You're so mean. You were planning that. Wake me up when this is over. Listen, buddy. So anyway, so you can do this kind of stuff. My point being that if you were looking at so rotten, if you were looking at writing content like a book, and then writing like maybe you have a lab book, but then you also want to do slides, which is my world here. You could use the same tool to do both. So I have a little sample project that I'm going to share, and I'll give the link to Becca so she can put it up with the video.
This
And it's just
Explorer is nice.
What's that?
Like the ability to have this all in I guess in Visual Code or Studio, right? Code, and then being able to see your changes side by side. Pretty cool.
Yep. And you can immediately run the build, and I think I've broken the build. We'll see. I might get lucky. So let's see. So StreamYard thing on my way. Build. Please ignore any errors. All right. So the book version of this, if I'm running this thing through and generating an actual book document, it would look something. That's not right. It would look like this. Oh yeah, right. It would look like. And by the way, you can completely skin this thing and make it look great. There's all sorts of templates for ASCIIDoc PDF rendering. So this part of the project, ASCIIDoctor can render to HTML, it can render to text, it can render to whatever, and they have different projects. So there's a project called ASCIIDoctor-PDF, and that tool transforms to a markup. It does a table of contents automatically for it. If you want the table of contents, you can tell it how many levels deep to generate.
Mm-hmm.
You can have it do automatic code samples. This is the stuff that I really like. So when you're doing your code samples, you want them to have callouts maybe, or bold the text or something. So you can use this little syntax to generate cue balls. Let me show you what it looks like without the preview. So you have a listing, and the listing can have a caption. So it starts with a dot, and then right below the caption, you tell it that it's a listing, which is this weird syntax here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell it you have certain substitutions you're going to allow. So the quotes substitution setting will let you do things like bold things with stars, which is great. Also, if you use this angle bracket numbering scheme, and then below it you put, when this is closed, you put the actual annotations,
Mm-hmm.
it will render cue balls for you automatically. So you annotate your code, and it puts the annotations right below it. Really a nice thing you don't get out of like Markdown documentation.
Yeah.
So you can have very detailed listings and highlight things, bold them or not, or what have you. You can also do colored ones, but usually with PDF, you tend to not generate color. And so you would do black and white for these things, just to make it a little more, easy to look on the eyes and the printing. But
I like
this
it'd
is
be pretty cool like if all our like blog content, or if someone starts their own blog, but they're using ASCIIDoc to create all the source material, you could create publish the HTML, but you could also like take all your blog entries and create a PDF book out of them, which is pretty neat.
Exactly. So if you're a content-driven site and you can keep the content in a source markup style like this, then you can transform it to a website. You can transform it to whatever else. So you can use the, I'm always forgetting the name of the one. What's the content generator site that people are using a lot these days? I forget the name. And like the one that uses JavaScript and React to do that. I can't remember the name of it anymore. It doesn't matter. I think what Drew used a bit. But anyway, this is me having a moment.
Not Prismic, right? You're not about not Prismic, right? You're talking about like something like a Jekyll, but better.
Yeah, something like that, exactly. So you could take something like that, take this ASCIIDoc, transform it to HTML content, dump it out there for a generated site. And I would have a better day if I had more sleep. But the point being, so that's one of the cool things. You can transform that way and use different projects to transform different output types. But wait, there's more. Some of the other things that you can do is you can have these little admonitions like tips, warnings, questions. And there are like 7 or 8 of these. And you can use, this is using a web font to generate a nice icon for those things. And the code is really simple. If it's just a simple sentence, you can use, where is it on here? So if it's one line, you can just use note by itself with a colon. And then whatever you have there just automatically comes in. That's up towards the top of this thing. There it is. Links are automatically formatted for you, so you don't have to think about that. Just put the link in line. So that's an icon one. There's a question one down below. And that's like note or question or warning or whatever. You can make it multi-line, make a block out of it and have multiple lines. So you have like a call out on your page. Really great stuff.
Are the icons and things customizable?
You can change the font you're using. So I think you probably could do some customization of that.
Now, when you were back into the source view, could have sworn I saw a dot notation markup in there for like graph.
You did, and I'm glad you thought of that because that was part of my teaser here.
Okay.
ASCIIDoc has an ASCIIDoctor has ASCIIDoctor diagram library that you can plug into this. So
That's
you can
awesome.
embed. Oh, it's great. And there's a bunch of different formats, but dot is one of the formats. So, and I have that in the simp. So if we go a little further along, yeah. Also tables are really, I don't have a good example here because I didn't align it right, but tables are nice and easy to work with. And you can make tables look great and do highlighting and merge cells and stuff like that. Here's some more coding examples. And here are your dot diagrams.
Nice. Yeah. I'm awake now.
Right? Drew Rogers uses this. Once I showed it to him, he uses this for all his documentation when he deals with customers when they're putting together things like for run books and stuff like that. I believe he is still using that. But there's a dot like digraph, and there's a hierarchical diagram, and they have a bunch of others out there. I used Docker. So it turns out that to build this, I was doing this by hand and installing all these libraries using Gem. I think it's a Ruby-based one now that I think of it, using Gem and Gem files. And I'm like, the heck with this noise. There's got to be a Docker container. And so they do have Docker containers. And so with my build tool, I am using the Docker container, ASCIIDoctor. And so right there, Docker ASCIIDoctor. And you can run it and it installs all the ASCIIDoctor tools. And so I'm just running it and saying, run the PDF generator, install the plugin ASCIIDoctor diagram during this build. I can pass it a build date or whatever I want as a variable, embed it in the headers, the titles, the footers, whatever I want. Didn't show you that, but there's a whole header and footer system. And then, yes, I want a table of contents. It is a book format. So like 1 heading is the book title, 2 is the chapter title, and 3 on are the subheads. And then it will dump it out as a PDF and whatever you say is your -D. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to put this up here as a GitHub project for people to clone and let people know where it is. We'll do a tweet on the @TechCast and also have it in the show notes. Let me talk briefly also about slides with this, because one of the problems I've had in the past is using different build tools for slides and different build tools for documents. Turns out that ASCIIDoctor can work with both. If you're building a slide deck, you just use 2 and 3 dashes. So for example, we can say, let me see here. I'm not doing this right. Section 1. So 2 would be a section header for your slides. Randomly grab a couple. I just grabbed a few slides for my training. Section 2. And you do things with bullets, right? Or numbered sections and code snippets. And you just have to be cognizant of the fact that you're working in a slide format.
Yeah.
So you don't put a whole document in there in a giant book, right? Because you're going to bore people to death. And for training, I'm more verbose than a lot of like presenters because they like to have like an image and a nice rock on water. And let's think about what I'm about to tell you in verbal form. But for training, you usually have code examples and lists.
What is it? So when you're doing slides, what is the output format?
Revealjs and there's also Slidio and HTML5 slides and things like that. But I use Revealjs a lot. So what I did was in this project, I just made a copy of the Revealjs project. And I forgot what version I'm using, but there's specific versions that tie to specific ASCIIDoctor versions. I think it's 392, if I'm thinking correctly, of Revealjs.
This could be worth the price of admission right here, because it's been a long time since I've used Revealjs, and it's probably much better than it was when I used it years ago. But I know with styling and imaging, I had issues, and it was a pain to get it all looking the way I wanted it to. So I'm guessing now having this layer of abstraction over that may be really nice. So
good that you mentioned this, because so let me show you what I was doing to build it first. So this is you can kind of follow that these are slides, right? And a slide has a certain number of bullets that fit on the slide. And yes, we can use our preview tool here and send it to the right. Oh, darn. So we can get a feel for that. Forget to get the send it to the right thing. Of course, I'm going to get that wrong. Good enough. That works. Perfect. All right. So you have an include here. You can include files. So you can have a larger file, include other files. And I have different settings files for slides versus the book. But for example, I have different settings like little macros for what I want to see for a listing for different language types.
Okay.
I have little shortcuts for like I want to use GraphViz, so output this. So these are like variables you can create, and you can use them in line in your code. In my slide deck, here's an example of a shortcut for showing a JavaScript listing. So just the brackets normally, but instead of actually putting the stuff in line, I use curly braces around the name that I give it in the preview file, in the settings file. So you can kind of lump these together and change them all at once. I'm a believer now. I knew I can convert you. So let's look at how we built that. It's another Docker example with the same Docker image, and we're using ASCIIDoctor Revealjs. We're pointing to where we dropped the file, which is the folder Revealjs, and provided we have a compatible version of Revealjs cloned, then when we do a build, ignore the images message. Now I can go into my Reveal and I can do grunt start. I'm sorry, npm start. And there are my slides. Now, that is not my slides because that's index HTML. The one thing I haven't figured out yet and I don't care about is how to output it as a specific file name. I'm sure it's a setting. But now I've got my two-section thing. There's my two sections. It uses VI finger shortcuts, JKL and semicolon to move around the slides. This is Revealjs now. And I certainly didn't format this nicely. But you can see there's code snippets. It can look a lot nicer than this, like the cue balls and stuff. In fact, if you'll give me 30 seconds, show you what's capable, what's possible. Oops. Just with a little bit of styling with your own theme. Of course, this will take 3 weeks.
I guess like it has to be slides, right? Like that option, like the only thing that makes sense with using Revealjs is -a slides, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're basically saying the format is a slide deck format.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll see how long it takes to do this, but the other thing I'll say is, oh, here we go. And slide deck. So here's what we do in ours. We don't have fabulous looking slides. We're teaching people. We don't care about perfection. We care about technical information. So, there's an example of a cue ball styled a little differently, or I should say an admonition styled differently, having pieces of information in here. There's a table with a little bit of styling applied to it. Here are some code samples. There's still a styling issue with this particular version of this class, but you can have numbering in like a border, thin line, and spacing. So that should be that. I'm not sure why it's not at the moment, but it's just giving you an example what's possible. And so for example, you're going through and doing different commands. Yep, it looks like there's something wrong with a few of these slides, but I'm not too worried about it, just for a demo. But there you go. So you can use ASCIIDoctor and have it generate the slide format, but also with that same project, generate a book of the slides to print out for your customers, right? So that's what I'm doing here, and using the Docker container like I was before. And when you get the PDF, it prints in a book format. So the slides are just separate sections in the book, just like they would be any other place. And now they've got a printed copy of the slides for taking notes. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be PDF generated. You could do it this way, or you could take Revealjs and tell it to generate a PDF print and have a visual slide that looks like the slide you're actually presenting.
Okay. So
all that stuff from the ASCIIDoc file format and the ASCIIDoctor tool with Docker. So I figured that might be useful for people if you've done anything where you had to do a lot of different types of documents, but you don't want to constantly have different formats for slides versus books.
Yeah.
And you want to take mass advantage of what you can get accomplished with ASCIIDoctor.
So
it's a nice tool set.
question. if I were writing blog posts for Chariot, our website, chariotsolutions.com, can I use this to write my blog post in first?
You could. The only problem is the styling might be weird. So I
Okay.
think we need to hack around a little bit, make sure that we have a transform that makes sense for it. So you may have to build like a customization of something, but I would think it would be like the ASCIIDoctor HTML converter, and
Mhm.
then you may strip the formatting and have like Becca and I work with that to make it look nice, for different styles. So one thing I'll tell you is it is a little cryptic sometimes to work with. Like the goofiest part of it is with your code samples. Many times, if you want to annotate a code sample, the stars work to bold things. But you can imagine the language like Scala or Angular's templating language, asterisks get involved and things get screwy. So there's like a pass command to say bracketed areas are completely passed as is. Don't format them on me. So it can get a little weird for that and for the cue ball alignment. But you can do things in this you can't do in Markdown. So
Gotcha.
very cool. All right. Yeah. So like I said, we'll put a post to where that is in the show notes. You'll see the GitHub project for it, and I'll clean up a little bit more before I do that today. But hopefully that's been useful for people. So
That's awesome.
and that's so that should do it for the week. So if you have any feedback, please send us feedback by tweeting to @TechCast or sending us email at techcastfeedback@chariotsolutions.com. And we really appreciate you spending your time with us today. So for the Tech Chat Tuesday, I'm Ken Rimple.
Sujan Kapadia.
Make it a good week.
Take care, folks.